Ruby sat on the steps of their small ramshackle house and cried silently. She tried to do it inconspicuously so that no one would see, especially her older brothers, who were always making fun of her. The girl had a warm and affectionate relationship only with her younger brother Tommy, whom she constantly looked after while her mother was at work. And Mother had to work hard because the father of the family was constantly drinking, often taking the money earned by the woman, and it was increasingly difficult for her to survive with 4 children. Ruby pitied her mother and loved her and her younger brother, but she felt only disgust for her father and older brothers, so much like him. Ruby's family lived on the outskirts of town, so she had to get up very early for school. But the girl was only glad to get out of the house as soon as possible, and if it were not for Tommy, who needed attention, then she would not hurry back. At home, Ruby helped her mother in everything, and by the time she was 14, she was able to do all the housework. There was barely enough money in the house for food, new clothes were rare, and the children wore what was given by kind neighbours who knew about the difficult situation of the family. Ruby was seriously interested in painting, and she turned out incredibly beautiful drawings. She could spend hours admiring nature and tried to transfer this splendour on paper. Her mother supported her hobby and always found the money to buy paints and paper for her daughter, but she was unable to pay for her education in art school. Ruby took it easy because she knew they could not afford much, but since then the girl had a cherished dream. At school, Ruby practically did not communicate with anyone, as she was embarrassed that someone would know the details of her life. So she had no friends, and most of her classmates just laughed at her or didn't notice her at all. One day, when she came back from school, Ruby saw her father turning the whole house upside down, searching for money for drinking, and even hitting his mother, while little frightened Tommy was crying non-stop. At that moment, Ruby felt madly sorry for her mother, and a feeling of hatred for her father swept over her. "Mum, why do you put up with all this? How much longer can it be?" Once again, Ruby asked her mother. "Daughter, I understand it myself, but where will we go? You know that I do not have relatives, and we will have nowhere to live, so we have to endure," sadly replied the woman, having just calmed down the younger son. Ruby thought for a moment and then said excitedly, "I dream that someday I will become a well-known artist, leave here and take you and Tommy with me, so that all of this terrible nightmare will be over. Do you think my dream will ever come true?" The mother looked at her daughter, held her close and assured her that all her dreams would surely come true. The main thing was to believe and hope. They sat outside the house for a long time, talking and dreaming about how beautiful their lives would be one day. But it was time to go back, and when they got home they were horrified to see the house was in chaos. Ruby rushed to her things and realized with horror that they were all torn, and that she would not even have anything to wear to school tomorrow. Ruby looked at her mother in tears, and the woman also had tears streaming down her cheeks. But she quickly pulled herself together and soothed the sobbing Ruby, telling her that by morning she would mend everything so that no one would notice. "Why is he doing this to us? Why doesn't he love us?" "It's not like that. He just doesn't understand what he's doing. His addiction has taken him over completely." The mother tried to somehow justify the father, although she herself had long understood that he was degraded and impossible to live like that. But she had nowhere to go away from him either. Her elder sons were happy with everything, and they warned her at once that in case of divorce that they would stay with their father. And he wasn't hurting them, because they were old enough to fight him back, so the man most often took his anger out on the wife and the younger children. The next morning, Ruby, wearing a sweatshirt and skirt carefully mended by her mother, calmed down a little and went to school. On the way, she saw posters announcing an exhibition of paintings by famous artists. The girl stopped and thought dreamily. She thought to herself, "I wish I could go there and see the paintings of professionals." But she had no money to get in. Sighing sadly, she wandered on to school, not knowing that she would remember this day for the rest of her life. At first, all was quiet. The lessons went at their own pace, and during the breaks, Ruby drew. She carried her folder of drawings with her always. But when in chemistry class, she had to come up to the blackboard. A wave of laughter swept through the classroom. Her classmates noticed the patches on her clothes and began to mock Ruby, and even the teacher could not pacify them. Barely able to hold back the tears, Ruby returned to her seat and was horrified to see that someone had grabbed her folder and that they were already hopelessly ruined drawings lying all over the classroom. "Stop it! Why?" shouted Ruby, trying to gather the surviving papers. After collecting what she could, she rushed out of the classroom, accompanied by the insulting shouts of her cruel classmates. Ruby spent the rest of the day in the office of the nurse. The woman knew the girl's family history and always felt sorry for her. So when she met Ruby in the hallway crying, she immediately took her to her. Ruby was hysterical, not understanding why she had been treated so cruelly. The nurse gave her a sedative and tried to distract her from her thoughts of what had happened. Calmed down, Ruby waited until after the last session, when all her classmates had gone far ahead, and only then decided to leave the school and walk toward home. The girl slowly wandered far behind everyone and thought about how could she go to school now, because the taunts against her would not stop, and she was no longer able to stand it. Suddenly, Ruby noticed that the boys from her class had stopped ahead of her and surrounded an elderly man who was lying on the ground. The man tried to get up, but to no avail, and instead of words he let out some unintelligible mooing, which made the boys around him laugh. "He's so drunk he can't even stand up," someone shouted, and everyone laughed in unison. But Ruby knew at once that the man was not drunk. She knew very well how a man looks in this state. The lying man was really in some kind of trouble. His classmates quickly lost interest to the man, and after throwing a few more insulting phrases at the man, they left. Ruby quickly ran up to him, who had already given up trying to get up and was lying motionless. "Are you unwell? Can I help you?" the girl asked, kneeling beside him. The unfortunate man mumbled and with a nod of his head pointed to his pocket, which contained a cell phone. Ruby immediately understood everything and took out the phone, called an ambulance. She put the man's head in her lap and muttered, "Don't worry, you will soon get help. Meanwhile, I'll be with you, so don't get scared, okay?" The man nodded. Ruby tried to talk to him the whole time until the ambulance arrived. The girl had seen once in a movie that the main thing for a person in a serious condition was not to let him lose consciousness or fall asleep. So she tried to put this into practice. Ruby had time to tell him about everything: her family problems, her passion for painting, what happened at school today, and how hurt she was to hear what her classmates said. When the ambulance arrived, Ruby promised to visit him by all means. Waiting for the weekend, the girl immediately ran to the hospital. She did not know the name of the man she rescued, but after describing him and giving the date when he was brought, she managed to find out the ward number. Upon entering him, Ruby noted that the man looked much better. She said hello and apologized for not being able to bring him any presents. "Thank you for everything, my angel," said the man quietly, looking at the embarrassed Ruby. "You are a very kind girl, and I want to help you. Write your name and address on a piece of paper, and I will definitely find you. In the meantime, take a business card on the nightstand with it. You can get free admission to the art exhibition in your town." 2 weeks passed and Ruby went to the exhibition, taking her usual folder of drawings with her. She was allowed in, and when she went inside and looked around a bit, the very man she had saved came up to her. "Hello, my angel. I've been waiting for you to come. Do you like it here?" he asked with a smile. "Very much. Thank you so much. I've been longing to be at this exhibition," Ruby replied admiringly, with genuine delight in her eyes. "I am the owner of a gallery in the capital. My name is Mr. Evans, and as of today, you can visit any of my exhibitions for free. By the way, I never thanked you. I paid for all the tuition for you at your painting school, so it's all in your hands now." Hearing this, Ruby couldn't hold back tears of joy, and after thanking Mr. Evans, she cried, "Why are you crying? You should be happy, and you never showed me your drawings as you promised," the man continued to say with a smile. Ruby handed him her folder, and when Mr. Evans saw her work, he added affectionately, "You have talent, my angel, a real talent." In less than 2 years since Ruby began her studies in art school, she had already presented her first work at one of the exhibitions organized by Mr. Evans. The paintings were bought immediately, and with the proceeds, Ruby was able to take her mother and younger brother and move away from her father to a rented apartment. Mr. Evans was in constant contact with Ruby and became attached to her as if she was his own granddaughter. By the time Ruby was graduating, she was already very popular as a young artist. Soon she left her hometown to work in the capital, but she didn't regret it in the slightest, since her close people were there, and limitless possibilities and interesting life full of happy moments were ahead of her, which she had dreamed of so long ago.